I think we're now ready to proceed, Chair.
Okay, well, thank you and welcome everyone to this meeting. Please, members, do mute your microphones unless you are speaking, and only use the chat function for MIS, may I speak, and voting. Joe, could you call out the names for attendance, please?
Yes, thank you. Rob Appleyard. Come back to Rob. Tim Ball.
Here.
Sarah Bevan.
Present.
Colin Blackburn.
Present.
Alison Bourne. Present. Thank you. Shelley Bromley.
Present.
Neil Butters.
Present.
Vic Clark.
Present.
Sue Craig.
Present.
Paul Crossley.
Present.
Jerry Curran.
Present.
Chris Dando.
Present.
Jess David.
Present.
Tom Davis.
Present.
Sally Davis.
Present.
Doug Deacon.
Present.
Winston Dugood.
Present.
Mark Elliott.
Present.
Michael Evans.
Present.
Andy Furs.
Present.
Kevin Guy.
Present.
Alan Hale.
Present.
Liz Hardman.
Present.
Steve Hedges. Come back to Steve. Joel Hurst.
Present.
Lucy Hodge.
Present.
Duncan Hounsell.
Present.
Sean Hughes.
Present.
Eleanor Jackson.
Present.
Grant Johnson.
Present.
Councillor Dr. Kumar.
A Happy Lantern Festival, present.
Hal McPhee.
Present.
Ruth Malloy.
Present.
Paul May.
Present.
Matt McCabe.
Present.
Sarah Moore.
Present.
Robin Moss.
Present.
Paul Myers.
Present.
Lisa O'Brien.
Present.
Michelle O'Doherty.
Present.
Barrett Pankania. June Player.
Present.
Vic Pritchard.
Present.
Manda Rigby.
Present.
Dina Romero.
Present.
Mark Roper.
Present.
Richard Samuel.
Present.
Bruce Shern.
Present.
Brian Simmons. Okay. Alistair Singleton.
Present.
Sean Stevenson McGall.
Present.
Andy Waite.
Present.
Karen Walker.
Present.
Sarah Warren.
Present.
Karen Warrington.
Present.
I've been notified of apologies from Councillor Chris Watt. Ryan Wills.
Present.
David Wood.
Present.
Joanna Wright.
Present.
Okay, I'll just check. Councillor Rob Appleyard.
Yeah, sorry, my enthusiasm, I pressed the wrong button, but I am here.
Great, thank you. Steve Hedges.
Yeah, I'm here. I was a little bit late. Sorry.
Thank you. Barrett Pankania. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would inform all councillors that the monitoring officer has granted a general dispensation to all councillors in respect of their payment of council tax and school governorships in regard to item 8. A specific dispensation for the following interests declared by councillors has also been granted. Joe, could you read them out, please?
Yes, Councillor Sarah Warren, family member in receipt of an EHCP. Councillor Tim Ball, family member in receipt of social services support and EHCP. Lisa O'Brien, family member in receipt of social services support. Sue Craig, family member in receipt of social services support. Kevin Guy, family business, is a recipient of a COVID relief grant, and that is the same for Councillor Sean Hughes and Councillor Colin Blackburn. Karen Walker, a holder of office at Peasdown Community Library, And Councillor Anne Hale has let me know he wants to declare as both his daughters receive benefits. And if there's anybody else who needs to make a declaration, please do so now. Thank you.
Councillor Steve Hedges.
Thank you, Chair. I want to make a declaration that I receive benefits, and also my wife now works for the company that has taken over from Virgin.
Thank you, Councillor
Thanks, Steve.
Hedges. Okay, the next item, we will note the minutes of the 18th of November 2021. We will recommend them for formal approval at council tomorrow. We then have a number of announcements. Due to a desire to retain a level of social distancing after restrictions have lifted, we are holding this informal virtual council meeting to enable all councillors to take part. The comments and indicative decisions from this meeting will help inform the physically reduced quorate decision-making meeting tomorrow on the 16th of February 2022. I would also remind councillors that following dispatch of the main agenda pack, a revised Annex 2(1) recommendation and Annex 11 have been circulated and also are available on the website. I would also confirm that all votes on the budget, which is item 8, are required to be a recorded vote. Finally, I would ask councillors to hold a minute's silence to mark the sad and timely but recent death of former Baines councillor, chairman and mayor of Bath, Ian Gilchrist. He was a gentle, kindly person who will be greatly missed. Thank you. I have some further urgent business to announce to you. Councillors will be aware that a note was sent out earlier with a revised link to the amended local council tax support scheme, highlighting that some minor changes to the scheme were necessary to reflect that the recently announced £150 energy bill rebate payments are not to be taken into account when determining eligibility for council tax reductions under the scheme. Thank you. Right, we have 4 statements from the public tonight. So I first of all call on Paul Stanzel, please.
Hello.
Paul Stanzel, yes?
Yes.
Please start.
Can you hear me?
I do. We can hear you. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. I want to talk about the introduction of office services into the podium library. I'm a retired architect and a former government advisor on building development. Some council office services, including blue badge and parking permits, were recently relocated from the one-stop shop in Lewis House into the podium library. I understand this is outside the normal process of planning approval. No consultation with the public had been sought. I also understand no permission from the Council Planning Department had been obtained. Under planning law, the Council's de facto changes, namely introducing office services into the podium library space, are not allowed. The Town and Country Planning Use Classes, September 2020, places office services under Class E and public libraries under Class F1. The one-stop shop that until recently included the purchase of blue badges and parking permits remains located within Lewis House and falls under the use class for offices. When challenged by Friends of Bath Podium Library on the introduction of blue badge and parking permits into the podium library, my local councillor answered that blue badge and parking permits are ancillary to the library service as per Keynsham. However, Keynsham was a new development in which the services were included at the time of planning permission was sought. The podium development was specifically for a library and no ancillary services attached to the library use were ever included. Two incompatible use classes cannot be forced together. The ancillary use argument is invalid. This was made clear in a letter dated the 19th of October 2018 and signed by Leon Pemberton on behalf of Safe Bath Library. The campaign at the time had sought legal counsel on this matter, and copies of these letters being circulated to council members. Will the council please stop deliberately and willfully misleading the public by using the term ancillary services? For example, the relocation of a small number of ancillary information services from Lewis House to another location. This has nothing to do with the use of the term ancillary to the primary use class within planning law. The previous council administration halted their plans to integrate one-stop services within the podium library when it was shown that it would not be lawful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stanzel. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll defer my question to Councillor Romero.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you, Paul, for your statement. I just wondered, would you like to correct your statement as actually no services have been relocated to the library? In fact, and I went in there today just to check, and the staff there told me when I asked if blue badges and such were available services to have at the Bath Central Library, I was told, no, it's just books and stuff. So I ask you, Paul, would you like to correct your statement as in fact no services have been relocated?
I can't, because when I went into the library, they were there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, thank you. Paul, you've raised some relevant concerns, but I have no factual questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Hello, Paul. Just for clarification, you stated that the podium library was specifically for a library and not ancillary services. Do you believe by including ancillary services, this will take away the unique quality of services that the library already offers?
That's a misuse of the term ancillary services. You're using the, if you look at my statement, please read my statement and then rephrase your question, because you can't use the term ancillary services here.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Moss.
No factual questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stanzel.
Chair, can I ask, I don't know what point of order it is, but I am concerned that something that is not true is being put about as being true. What is the process for addressing this?
Right. Councillors, Mr. Stanzel has made his comment. You have presented evidence that refutes his comments. He is entitled to express his opinion, and I believe, having previously Michael Hewitt would confirm that he is entitled to make the statement to council. Michael, would you wish to confirm, please?
Sure, yes. person can make any statement that they want. Insofar as this is not a court of law where we're having to establish what is fact or not, we'll just leave it at that and move on to the next speaker, I suggest.
Thank you, Michael. I'd like to call now Mary English.
Dear councillors, my name is Mary English and I'm a local author and resident. When my son was small and I was a single parent, the library was our sanctuary to borrow books and escape the harsh realities of low income. I'm part of the Save Bath Library campaign and Friends of Bath Library that secured the asset of community value that Bath Central Library now enjoys. I am bitterly disappointed to learn that in the latest budget proposals, there are plans to once again put council services into the library. As you may or may not know, Save Bath Library protested vigorously to prevent this from happening while the council was being led by the Conservatives. Any changes to library services must be discussed with library users first. So I was even more dismayed that none of us were even told that this was a proposal. Councillors Samuels and Romero have now assured us that it is only certain council services that will be put into the library, but any council service is one council service too many. Libraries are places to do learning, reading and research. There are plenty of other places in Bath where residents can apply for blue badges or pay parking fines. Once these council services are slipped into the library, it won't be long before we cease to have libraries and librarians and instead have customer service pods and customer service staff, which are not the same at all. And even though we've been assured that this is all that would be added into the library, what's to stop a future council under a different political party from adding even more services and watering down the wonderful provision we already have? I'm here to add my voice to the groundswell of local residents that do not agree that this would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss English. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to defer my question to Dina Romero.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mary, for your statement. Are you aware that there are no plans in place and that the budget proposal is a starting point for something to be considered, and that at least as long as I am in charge of this part of the portfolio, any changes to services within Bath Central Library will be consulted on with residents and user groups?
Mary, a simple yes or no will suffice.
That would be lovely if that's the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Mary, thank you for your statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mary, for your statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Thanks for the statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. The next speaker we have is David Redgewell. David, are you there?
Yes, I'm there, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, my comments and statement tonight is about the budget, really. It's about making sure that we passport the appropriate amount of money to the West of England Combined Authority to maintain public transport, which obviously was a function of this council, but is now a function of the West of England Mayor Dan Norris. It's very important that we maintain that service and the supported bus services. And we also work with the other unitary authorities and North Somerset. I'm also keen to make sure that we have an adequate budget to repair the bus shelters. Although I've had some audit done by some colleagues of mine the last few weeks, and I'm sad to say that we have damage to bus shelters in Twerton, Odddown, Peasdown, St John, down to Radstock and Midsummer Norton, and some damage in Keynsham. I just want to be assured we have not only we have a repairing budget, but we also have a budget that maintains those shelters. And I know it's difficult because WECA supplies the information, The Mayor provides all the information on the stops, but the stops and shelters are maintained by Bath and North East Somerset on his behalf. So I want to make sure that's covered off in the budget. Also want to make sure that we have money to remove graffiti. Graffiti is not acceptable in the Bristol Bath travel to work area. It's not acceptable in any of the 4 unitary authorities. It's certainly not acceptable in Oldfield Park, where we've seen a great deal of it spreading around the railway station, the back of the walls and the streets. And I hope the council is going to take action, not just enforcement and fining with the Avon and Somerset Police, but also bringing some of these culprits to the courts. Because we do need to take action on graffiti. It's spreading around the network, and it discourages people from using public transport. On public toilets, well, that's still an issue that the council needs to address. We still need to make sure we've got adequate public toilets in Bath and across the district as a whole. That's very important, especially for public transport users. And on tourist information, I'm still very anxious that we work with Visit West and we tackle this issue of lack of tourist information centres, both in Bristol and in Bath. Two of the biggest economic earners to the city. We keep on hearing about heritage estates, and just to make sure that we are picking up some sites in those two cities for tourism, and of course in Rasdorf, Midsummer Norton and Cambridge. And finally, on the bus back better thing and the money, I'm still extremely concerned. We got an extra £29 million on Friday from Baroness Veer, but that only takes us up to the 5th of November, the 5th of April. And we still need to maintain those bus networks. Otherwise, we'll take a 30% reduction. And I was talking to Dan Norris about this and to Councillor Toogood about it. We really must keep the pressure on to maintain the vital bus services of Bath and North East Somerset and the local rail services. And that is down to the DFT and working with the MPs and with the Metro Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No factual questions, but just like to thank David for his statement.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, David, you mentioned about the maintenance of bus shelters and ridding ourselves of graffiti, but the services that we're having at present and the services that we're denied in areas like the Chew Valley, wouldn't it be best to concentrate finances on keeping those services alive and introducing new systems of public transport where there's a definite deficit?
I mean, we have to maintain the bus shelters and the infrastructure and make sure they're safe for the passengers. But I'm with you. We need to work with the Metro Mayor, with Dan Norris and with North Somerset Council to really sort out what the problems are with the bus service into the Chew Valley, whether that's a demand responsive service from the A37, Farrington and Pensford and from Bristol Airport. But it's totally unacceptable to have a great chunk of the West Green and Combined Authority area and into North Somerset without a proper bus service. And we really must work with Baroness Veer and the MPs and with Dan Norris to rectify that, and hopefully Bus Back Better, the bus service improvement plan, will highlight some money into rural areas like the Chew Valley, and I hope we're going to see better buses in the Chew Valley.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Walker.
I think Councillor Pritchard just covered what I wanted to ask. Thank you very much. Thank you, David.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Thanks for the statement, David. I've got no factual questions.
Thank you. And we move now on to Mr. Halliday. Andy, good evening. Off you go. Andy, can you unmute yourself, please? Can you unmute yourself, Andy? Yep, off you go.
Okay, thank you. With a sense of deja vu, I want to express my sincere disappointment that this library service is again being attacked. At a time when public well-being and investing in education is much on the government's agenda, it is, in my view, essential that we look at ways in which we can invest in the podium library, such as marketing the quality income-generating rooms for diverse opportunities. A key to our service success is to recruit dedicated library-only orientated staff who would be highly trained to deliver unique quality services for the variety of visitors who flood daily into the purpose-built, prestigious library. Diluting the services offered already should not, I feel, be on anyone's agenda. By contrast, a serious commitment to ensure the library's services and their future at a high standard are maintained. Please therefore reconsider your present proposals to again decimate our wonderful library provision. I genuinely believe failure to do so will have catastrophic long-term consequences on the lives of so many people in this area and our visitors. Thank you. I'm Andy Halliday, the former manager of Bath Central Library.
Thank you, Andy. Councillor Moss, do you have any factual, sorry, I do beg your pardon. Councillor Guy, do you have any factual questions?
Quite all right, Madam Chair. I will defer my question to Councillor Romero, please.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Andy. Are you aware that there are no plans to cut library services, and will you be willing to discuss proposals to help shape library services for the future?
I most certainly would. I welcome that information. I am nervous, though, about plans to cut further the budget relating to the library service on top of what was already cut during my time in the library and subsequent years in terms of staff and
Right.
stuff.
It was right. Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, Andy, thank you for your statements, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Andy, for your statement, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Councillor Moss.
Thanks for the statements, but no factual questions.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, Andy. Thank you to all our speakers. We now move on to agenda item 8, the Budget and Council Tax 2022-2023 and financial outlet. Before we do so, I would remind members that any amendment to the budget proposal will only be considered after the speeches from cabinet members, group leaders, and so I will also now move you on to a preliminary proposal with regard to the suspension of rules. Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In accordance with Rule 16, suspension of rules, Rule 42 be suspended to allow the length of speeches for the budget debate to be varied. Unless otherwise stated, all movers' speeches are 5 minutes, with the exception of the move of the budget, which is 10 minutes, and all of the speakers will be 3 minutes, Madam Chair. So move.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for this?
Yes, Madam Chair, I will second that. I'd be quite happy to second the proposal as been put to Council this evening.
Thank you. In line with our normal procedure, if there is any councillor who does not wish to support this motion, can they please record that in the chat now, please? Anyone who does not wish to support this proposal? I see none, so the proposal is carried. Thank you. We now move on to the formal discussion, and I would invite Councillor Richard Samuel to present the budget recommended by the Cabinet and to formally move adoption of the recommendations in the report, highlighting the revised recommendation and annexes that have been circulated. Councillor Samuels.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, as with so much in life, there are always choices to be made, up or down, backwards or forwards, left or right. In running our national and local affairs, the choices now become much starker. Those of us on the left prefer to invest positively and fairly in society, using the resources we have to build a better future, prioritising the environment over profit and greed. Those on the right seem to prefer cuts, disinvestment, privatisation, and pursuing failed market-led philosophies. When we hear the leader of the Conservative group presaging the cuts he would make if he came into power, the redundancies, the reversals of policy, then we know that there is a clear difference between the way that they would run the council and we have. Our residents want us to concentrate on rebuilding after the pandemic, and that is what we are doing. Talking the language of cuts and austerity is so old politics. So today's budget is about one of those choices. Our way, which invests in services, prepares for the future, improves the residents' lives and tackles the big issues, and prepares the council to be an even better, more effective organisation to serve our residents. The budget you're about to hear relies on 4 principles: that spending should be related to investment and good returns, that estimates should be robust, tested, and create certainty, that money is precious and must never be wasted or squandered, and what is to be achieved must be clearly communicated and meet the council's goals, and those are set out in the council's corporate strategy. This year's budget majors strongly on these principles and is all about investment, investment, investment. However, before I get to the details, a reminder of the background. An unprecedented pandemic that has decimated lives, businesses, and shaken the very fabric of our society over the last 2 years. For this council, by 2025, we estimate that 82.3 million gross will have been lost in income to the council, never to be seen again. When this is added to the huge inflationary pressures in the economy caused by the government's incompetence and the bouncing back of demand for our own local services as the pandemic becomes endemic, then a perfect storm has been created. With minimal government grants and only year-to-year funding offers from them, the starting point was unpromising. So our task this year was to continue to improve living standards, maintain levels of spending on key services, do what we can to contain carbon growth, particularly in transport, protect the most vulnerable, and keep taxes down as far as possible. My starting point is to say what we are doing to invest in the council itself to enable it to be a more effective organisation. So we are investing £18 million in more and better IT to improve the customer experience and beef up our resilience, more capability for flexible staff working, fair wages for staff, preparations anticipating demographic growth in our area, new revamped council offices in Keynsham, a new police station for Bath, a new business hub to drive efficiency and savings, improved property management and maintenance arrangements, better parking services, more social work capacity, and energy saving and green vehicles. Now, other cabinet members will talk about their own portfolios, but in economic development, I want to highlight a number of things. We will be taking forward the plans for the Fashion Museum Collection Centre and its new permanent base this year. We will be progressing the next stage of the Milsom Quarter regeneration. We will deliver 6 high street regeneration programmes in North East Somerset and Bath High Streets. We will begin the major development works at Bath Quays North with the demolition of Avon Street car park and the opening of the new bridge. And we will complete the Radstock Healthy Living Centre and complete the planning application for the Bath Western Riverside land, which we have just swapped. We will also begin the Bath Riverline programme, and we will be taking forward the Somer Valley Enterprise Zone. Now, all these projects will bring forward jobs and increased economic activity to support our local economy. Of course, to maintain our programme, there are balancing savings we needed to find, and I have identified 11.8 million of savings and income changes. And that includes 2 million reduced borrowing costs, 2 million from efficiency savings in adult services, reductions in foster care placement costs, more money from the sale of recyclables, higher income from car parking charges, and the introduction of a 2% staff vacancy rate that'll save 1.3 million a year. Now, Chair, this is a budget that maximises our ambition to make Bath North East Somerset a better place, that maintains the move towards carbon reduction, particularly in transport, that invests in key services, and provides for the building of new council houses for the first time in 30 years. It is also a budget that invests in the future, not only for residents, but the council itself, as I have said. And the better we perform, the more we can do for our residents. This programme has to be fully funded, and to avoid damaging cuts, it is necessary to raise council tax, but only as little as possible. A general council tax rise of 1.99% is therefore proposed, which equates to £30.44 pence per year for a Band D property or 58 pence a week. In addition, the social care precept is proposed to rise by 1%, making a total rise of 2.99% or £45.73 per year, 88p a week. This increase is well below the current rate of inflation, which, as we all know, stands at 5.4% at the moment. Madam Chair, this programme is only possible because throughout the last 3 years, there has been tight financial control of our resources. So far, every quarter reported has shown the Council to be on track to balance the books year on year, and this despite the enormous shock created by the pandemic. This does not happen by accident, it happens by design. Our stewardship of the Council's finances is highly structured and robust and is intended to create high levels of confidence. I regret that by contrast, the party opposite lost its reputation for good financial management many years ago and is now the party that overpromises but underdelivers, that plays fast and loose with your money. Our budget plans are well thought out, robust, and deliver investment into our key services for local residents. We are building the first council houses. We are investing millions in our high streets. Our transport plans are bringing down air pollution. Our recycling is the best ever, and we are investing in its future. Our parks are looking better than they have for years, with 5 green flag wards. We have repaired Cleveland Bridge that has been left to deteriorate. Our improvements to Sydney Gardens, the opening of Cleveland Pools, and the new World Heritage Centre show our confidence in the future for our area. After the waste and incompetence of the last Conservative administration, we have brought the Council's finances under control, and we are investing in the future of our area. We invest, they slash and burn. We are the party of sound economic planning and delivery, and we have proved that by our actions. So, Madam Chair, I conclude by commending this budget to Council for debate, and I move the recommendations set out in paragraphs 2.1 to 2.4 of the report, together with the items in the supplementary agenda dispatches that there have been concerning Annex 2I to the main report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Samuels. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Guy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm extremely proud to second this budget paper. Once again, the Liberal Democrats have been able to balance the books in extraordinary times. This is in contrast to the financial mismanagement of the previous Tory administration, who could not even balance the books when the sun was shining. We as Lib Dems are not only showing prudent financial management, but we are delivering on the things that really matter, such as building the first council houses and crucial high street regeneration across Baines. The Tories spent years cutting services, reducing staff numbers, and wasting millions of taxpayers' money on redundancies. The Lib Dem administration has said no to this downward spiral of negativity. We are enhancing, as Councillor Samuels alluded to, we are investing in new staff, we are increasing spending in key services, we are enhancing our neighbourhood services, we are getting the basics right, and we are protecting children's and adult services. Local businesses are working hard to bounce back from the hardship of COVID, and this budget supports local businesses, opposed to the contrasting negativity and talking down of our great city and local area by a handful of Tories. The Tories have a track record of laying off hundreds of staff and bleeding vital services to death, while we Lib Dems, through this budget, are investing in the services our communities require. Instead of burning, we are building. Instead of moaning, we are doing. Instead of hatred, we give hope. I am proud to be the leader of the local Lib Dem team, and I am proud to second this budget. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Next, we have Councillor Warrington, who will present the scrutiny panel's view. Councillor Warrington.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. As I'm making my statement today as the chair of the corporate scrutiny panel. When the scrutiny panel met, unfortunately, I was not available. So I have based my comments on the minutes of the meeting. So in general, there were some concerns and there were some questions with regard to the budget. The concerns were really with the use of the 3 million corporate reserves and the 2.22 service reserves. We appreciate that it's temporary, but it still has to be replaced. And I also acknowledge that that was partly for repayment for COVID issues as well. But that money still has to be replaced. There may well be a new administration next year, so that will hang over to a new administration. In addition, there were other subjects. Climate emergency, whilst not the remit of this panel, there were still some issues with regard to the overall budget that was allocated to climate emergency. It is acknowledged that that climate emergency is rolled up into some of the projects, but I, for one, would like to see a little bit more transparency with regard to that. Clearly, two main areas are transport and energy loss. And whilst we understand that transport should mostly be now in the remit of WECA, there should still be some allocation here that we should be able to, as residents, consult on. In addition, we have issues surrounding energy delivery for electric vehicles, and also obviously the electrical grid is very important, especially out in rural areas where we don't have enough electrical areas to recharge. They're fewer, obviously, than they are in places like Bath. In addition to that, I think one of the major concerns was potentially an underestimation of the inflation, which is set at 2% in the budget. And clearly, as we moved into the budget, we were seeing inflation figures of up to 5%. So we would like to make sure that that is taken into consideration, at least going forward, and something to look at and make sure that we can monitor that against the budget. Other concerns looked at transport delivery programs, and also some of the savings that were identified, especially in children's services and in adult social care. Those are relatively big numbers. Our residents we have quite a lot of looked after children in terms of SEND, because we've got some fabulous schools here. We're also looking at a big saving in terms of foster care, and I appreciate that we're looking to bring that inside, but back into the area so that we save money, and we will work with other councils across the region. But again, that is, maybe that is something that we really need to keep an eye on, and that was something that had been brought to the fore at the meeting. Chair, I shall leave it there. I'm sure some of my other colleagues on the panels will have comments to add to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington. I now call on Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Some of you who watched last week's Cabinet meeting will be familiar with this administration's budget proposals. In that meeting, the Leader of Council congratulated each of his Cabinet members on their submissions and denigrated other contributions from those who were not members of his party. This evening's process denies the Leader that practice, so I'll take it upon myself to thank Councillor Samuels for his presentation. Tonight, I want to talk about priorities and this administration's skewed interpretation of what they are, as evidenced by proposals contained in this budget. The last 2 years have seen the worst public health crisis in decades. Despite support from the government, businesses have inevitably struggled to survive, and social isolation as a result of lockdowns, especially for the more vulnerable members of society, has become a serious issue. It is in this context that the administration has banned residents from driving into their own city centre and has made life unnecessarily difficult for people with disabilities to access the city centres. And now they want to charge everybody for the privilege. The inner ring of steel, which we now know was proposed by the council, not the police, will cost council taxpayers £128,000 this year. An irrational fear of cars, twinned with an unnecessarily draconian response to a hypothetical terror attack, has caused this administration to forget about the very people it was elected to serve. You must rethink your priorities. Cutting the library service by £126,000, CCTV provision by £14,000, and only backing down from introducing car parking charges in Midsummer Norton after a campaign of opposition, while simultaneously rolling out vanity projects such as low traffic neighbourhoods, again leads me to question this administration's priorities. They're so busy trying to save the planet, they've forgotten about Bath and North East Somerset. But then again, who needs free books, safe streets and free parking when you've got cycle routes in a city built on hills? Again, priorities. Before Clevedon Bridge closed for repair works, 40% of all traffic going across it at peak times was related to the University of Bath. Talking to the university would no doubt have presented a solution that, if properly implemented, could be a game changer in terms of improving congestion in Bath. But why bother with that when instead you can tackle congestion by creating even more congestion? As Councillor Warren has admitted in the local press, traffic chaos is welcome because it will allow new behaviours to emerge. Again, this administration's priorities are upside down. At last week's meeting, Cabinet members took delight in my reference to possible job losses should the Conservatives take full control of the council, and expressed fury in my commitment to reversing many of their policies. When we took control from the previous Liberal Democrat administration in 2015, job losses occurred due to the 1.7 million deficit we inherited. If this current Liberal Democrat administration continues to pursue its programme of skewed priorities and costly vanity projects, we fear being put in a similar situation. This outcome, however, can be avoided if you rethink your priorities, put people at the heart of the decision-making process, and remember, you're here to serve Bath and North East Somerset. For too long, we've had an administration content to fiddle while Bath burns. Unfortunately, they're the ones who lit the match in the first place. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Walker, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are fortunate that we have inherited a beautiful city, wonderful towns, villages and rural areas. This puts us in a far better financial position than many other local authorities, whichever administration is in place. Unfortunately, we are here again, looking at another budget lacking in any type of structure or detail, which makes it very hard for us to scrutinise. The budget presented to us this evening comes as a complete budget. There are many elements of this budget that we will still question, as details and full transparency are lacking. Members of the independent group have various concerns about these items within the budget and will be raising these later within the debate. This budget places a huge extra burden on our residents, and we believe that a sympathetic approach should be taken to ensure those residents who have found themselves facing hard times with the rising cost of living. This budget ticks the boxes that has very little vision for the future. We are not playing party politics games. We are here to represent our residents in the best way possible. We are always happy to engage with you to share ideas and help guide projects and ideas within our area. As Liberal Democrats, you talk a lot about democracy and transparency. We would like to see more of this. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Moss, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think the Labour Group takes the view that this is a difficult but somewhat disappointing budget proposal. I mean, we understand the context of being in a post-pandemic situation, particularly a post-pandemic situation in an area that relies on tourism income as a major source of pounds coming into the area. And also, of course, the context of the continuing uncertainty around social care, particularly adult social care. It doesn't seem that anytime soon the national insurance contributions that we'll be paying in a month or so are going to head towards local government. But that said, the figures just don't seem to add up. I mean, I get it that rebasing and reviews are almost a local authority standard when putting a budget forward, but there are some underlying assumptions within this budget that are very worrying. It's been pointed out that the inflation assumption is sitting at 2%. That's clearly not the case currently, and the projections from the Bank of England are that that those figures will go up. And it's disappointing that it seems to be the Office for National Statistics that the 2% comes from, rather than the Bank of England, and that is going to create a gap in a clear gap in the budget. There's also an element in here about having a 2% vacancy management level, and that will create savings. Well, we're running at the moment at sickness levels at 3 to 4%, and as the pandemic turns into endemic COVID, next winter, I think we're going to see similar levels of sickness. So add those sickness levels to vacancy levels, and what we're going to be seeing is any savings made on vacancy levels going to agency staff, particularly in some services, and particularly services like refuse and waste. And the lack of detail is, again, worrying because it's setting hairs running. I mean, we've seen the statements about the potential impact on library services. We've seen how that has had to be rowed back at the cabinet meeting, and clearly Dina is quite rightly having to explain what model the Liberal Democrats will be using. But coming from North East Somerset, any review of library services, when services are starting to bounce back but are not getting to levels that we'd like to see them at, is worrying, just in case we see services centralised rather than provided out in the districts. And I have to say, the Labour Group is not against co-location of services as long as that is consulted upon. And of course, one line that came to bite back was the parking charges in Midsummer Norton and Radstock, with the reaction that got from local communities. And I suppose that in summing it up, there are missed opportunities here. There's a lack of vision into the future, as well as failing to anticipate problems that are coming down the road towards us. And I'll just pick up on a few of those. First of all, we know that the whole Virgin Care HCRG issue is an extension to a contract that is up for renewal in a few years' time.
1 minute remaining.
We know that residential social care is fragile. So where's the preparation with either social enterprises or in-house replacements down the pipeline for those private services that are looking like they're failing? We know that you talk about investing in the high streets, but investing in the high streets supporting retail at the same time as increasing parking charges out in Midsummer Norton, Radstock and Ness clearly isn't joined up thinking. And really the opportunity for rebuilding back tourism to include the whole of North East Somerset, not just Bath, so day trips to Bath with the traffic problems that causes, that doesn't seem to be taken into account. And while there are elements of this budget that clearly the Labour group would support, and there are elements of the budget that are positive, there are reefs lurking under the surface, and those reefs are apparently lack of detail, so in that circumstance, the Labour group will be abstaining on the budget vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moss. Now I've got at the moment 14 speakers, so we'll go through them as effectively as we can. Thank you. So Councillor Hounsell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm proud to be part of this Liberal Democrat administration that has reacted so robustly to the financial challenges arising from the pandemic and the ambition that is evident in this budget for 2022-23. The residents of Salford, Corston, Compton Dando, Newton St Low, Burnett, Chewton Keynsham and Queen Charlton in my ward expect financial competence at Baines, and they have it. Strong financial management is reaping a reward that takes us from high-level spreadsheets to positive action on the ground. This includes in my ward, carriageway resurfacing for Bath Road, Salford, and for Corston Lane and Pennyquick Hill, carriageway surface dressing in and around Uplands Road, Salford, a contribution to the new Salford Tennis Clubhouse, maintenance of the stonework at Salford Brass Mill, a gem of industrial heritage, the long-desired introduction of 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in Chewton Keynsham and Compton Dando, and more. This is what Liberal Democrats councillors do, listening to residents, putting communities at the heart of our endeavours and improving people's lives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hale, please.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is transparency and comms budget cuts, which concerns. Past 2 years have been tough for everybody, not least for people experiencing some form of social isolation. Before the pandemic, loneliness among older generations was an issue that rightly began to gain a great deal of traction among politicians. Interestingly, the pandemic has demonstrated what local authorities can do to reach out to people experiencing social isolation. Volunteers selflessly gave their time to go shopping or collect prescriptions, etc. And with the benefits of modern communication technology, the council was able to connect with people who would ordinarily receive updates on a day-to-day service. In other words, the value of good public engagement has never been more apparent. It's with disappointment then that I note a cut of £34,000 to the council's corporate communications budget. The proposal lacks detail, and so I'm fearful that this cut could have a significant impact on the council's ability to communicate with residents. This issue is even more problematic because of this administration's terrible reputation for transparency and public consultation. Again, this is further evidence of skewed priorities. The administration just cannot see the value of public engagement, and it places a higher value on getting its own way than it does making policy that works for everybody. Members of 2 council scrutiny panels yesterday received an email from a resident complaining about the quality of the recent Livable Neighbourhoods consultation. And the resident said, and I quote, "The consultation was a sham and a waste of public money. Nothing can have been gained from it except public money squandered with minimal, if any, benefit." This is one of numerous emails we have received over recent weeks.
1 minute remaining.
On the topic of public engagement. This administration needs to remember that people, indeed the very people we were elected to serve, should be at the heart of everything the council does. That means making greater efforts to improve levels of public engagement and ensuring that consultations are not there simply to produce an outcome already decided upon. This was a repeated claim by residents complaining about the Livable Neighbourhoods consultation, and it's impossible not to agree with them. And I therefore urge members to think seriously about the consequences of making cuts to the department, whose job it is to engage with the residents on a daily basis. And the final point I would just like to mention I'm really concerned at the proposal to run with staff vacancies and have to ask the question, is this a cut in services or an increase in staff stress? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hale. Councillor Hughes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Now, obviously, I'm delighted that the budget plan to charge for parking in Midsummer Norton has been dropped. And I'd like to say a big thank you to all the residents who objected through the consultation, protested and signed petitions. This is a great result for all their efforts. The only sad part of this issue is the behaviour of the Lib Dem councillors who could have simply shown some respect for Midsummer Norton residents, withdrawn the proposal as a balanced response to a public objection. Sadly, they chose to wheel out their local candidates and cabinet member at the very last moment in a cynical attempt to take credit for their own mistake. To send a cabinet member to Midsummer Norton to protest against the very budget they created seems more of a Monty Python sketch than a credible concern for our residents. And to be honest, I would hope that we would be given more credit than that. So where were these people last month while our shop owners and our staff worried about the future of their businesses and their jobs? Genuine residents were objecting through the public consultation, arranging protests and signing petitions. Let me be clear, I am a totally independent councillor. I don't get involved in party politics. And personally, I don't care who takes credit as long as we achieve the best result for Midsummer Norton. However, this type of cheap party political game is negative and toxic, and it demonstrates a huge disconnect between the Lib Dems and Midsummer Norton. It's also important to note that this council is still pushing ahead with plans to build houses on South Road Car Park, and it's going before the planning inspector later this year. So the fight to protect our car park is not yet over. With regard to your budget plan to save £126,000 with cuts to Midsummer Norton and Keynsham libraries, I've asked for clarification from Councillor Romero 2 weeks ago, but I'm still waiting for a response. I have questioned the plan to carry out an exit survey over the coming weeks. As council buildings such as the library are clearly still in partial lockdown and the public are not yet confident about returning in person. I've also asked how you've already arrived at a figure of 126,000 without yet completing any surveys. I can only assume that you're cutting to fit a budget without any consideration of the impact on the local residents. Most importantly, I'm concerned about our blue badge holders, our residents with other mobility restrictions, our elderly and residents from our SEND community who need face-to-face support. We should also be mindful of the climate emergency obligations to keep access to our services local and to avoid unnecessary journeys to Bath. So yet again, we see decisions taken by a Bath-centric council with councillors with little understanding of the local community needs in Midsummer Norton. I can just only hope that you'll take the time to come and visit, engage and consult with us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Waite, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Samuel and Baines Financial Department for their hard work in trying to move this council forward in the most difficult of times. I am most grateful that they have recognised the importance of Keynsham in this budget and in the previous budget. In the past, the people of Keynsham have thought that most of their council tax went into Bath. Now there is more financial equality between Bath and North East Somerset. In Keynsham, the town is seeing its high street brought up to date, and though disruptive, the three-phase improvement costing over £3.5 million will give the chance for Keynsham community to enjoy a cleaner, greener and more attractive centre, which will, in turn, lead to a thriving market town, bringing greater numbers and wealth to our local businesses. The £1.5 million upgrade of the Civic Centre means that Keynsham will become the administrative centre of Baines. With flexible working, this will not lead to congestion in the town and will mean that Keynsham will be at the centre of all decision-making in Baines. I'm pleased to see that the Keynsham bypass will be swept clean of litter 4 times a year. This makes a statement of the importance that we give for cleanliness in Keynsham. I'm pleased also that Baines have committed a further £9.2 million to the development of the Pixash Lane Recycling Centre, meaning more recycling, more employment, and greater opportunities for local people to reduce, reuse, and recycle. The Keynsham Memorial Bridge has been a thorn in the side of the community since 2019 when it was deemed unsafe. But with the persistence from the local population and Baines councillors, we have £750,000 in the budget and a plan to deliver a new bridge over the River Chew, expected to last over 60 years. It should be finished in the next financial year, weather permitting. There is also 2.2 million cycling and walking bridge for the Chocolate Quarter, which should deliver in time a safe cycling route from Keynsham to the centre of Bristol. Finally, and for many the most important improvement in the town, through a partnership with the Town Council and a private operator, we are reopening the toilet in Ashton Way once more, the only public toilet which serves the High Street, which will bring great relief to many people in the town. No more can it be said that nothing changes in Keynsham. The investment and care this administration is bringing to the town will ensure a better, brighter future for Keynsham. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Waite. Councillor Wright, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Legislation clearly states that every councillor is responsible for the financial control and decision-making of their council. The Local Government Act requires full council to approve the council's budget and council tax demands. As a councillor, I'm expected to vote for Baines's projected budget of approximately 127 million as set out in these papers. I would like to thank the Section 151 officer and his team for the many hours of hard work put into this report. I am concerned how councillors from all sections of the council have been able to scrutinise this budget and the spending of millions of taxpayers' money with any rigour. In the past year, I have asked this council for financial training from the LGA and was told that it was not possible for me to have this. As a person with little financial training, which I assume is the same for most councillors across any elected chamber, I therefore call on the leadership to put in place proper financial training for all councillors so that we can properly fulfil our legal responsibility to sign off this budget, having given it informed scrutiny. As set out by the Treasury Management Code of 2017, it is the responsibility of the relevant officer for an authority to ensure that all council members have access to relevant financial training. In the last few months, we have learned that Virgin Care has been bought out by a private equity firm, now called HCRG, and which will now run much of the social care in Baines. In the adult social care precept section of this budget, it is not clear whether the new arrangement with HCRG will include inflation costs. It is clear that elected members have not been able to fully and properly scrutinise this budget and its ramifications for all the residents of Baines with reference to the buyout of adult care services. The most important element of this budget is the decision to set inflation at 2%. And Annex A, Arling Close Limited, a city firm that advises councils, state that inflation is set to rise in the next financial year in an order of 5 to 8%. This is across the board and affects everything. So clearly the medium-term financial strategy of any council has to take this important information into account. How can a budget that all councillors are being asked to sign off fail to include this important advice? My own household finances are already increasing, and I am having to plan ahead for this inflation. This is also the case for this council, and it means that in the next financial year, it will need to find approximately 10 million in extra money or in savings to be able to meet the budget as laid out in front of us here. Inflation has been buried in this budget, and the use of ONS data as a marker of inflation looks at what has taken place. It fails to address the future, which is what all budgets are about. The leader and deputy leaders are clearly asleep at the wheel. Senior management are using obfuscating economic language. Residents deserve better. The Green Party will be abstaining on this budget.
Time.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Kumar, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, my congratulations to Councillor Hughes, who beautifully said what I wanted to say about the Midsummer Norton parking. My former party deliberately put parking charges so that they could make an issue from a non-existing one. And then simply take credit by revoking it. But our county residents are not as foolish as they think. This proposed budget includes, and if I'm reading properly, 126,000 cut to library services, 128,000 on ring of steel operating costs, increase in council tax of at least £45 per band D every year. I have been talking about the aggressive council tax since the Lib Dems came to the administration almost 3 years ago. I simply do not believe in raising taxes unnecessarily, as I understand the impact on our residents who may not have had an increase in their wages, and particularly when we are seeing such a huge inflation, which is not seen in many decades. One may recall the LD administration under Councillor Corsley, who is present here today, who from 2011 to 15 did not increase a single penny during that term. Yes, we are going through unprecedented times, and there are large gray cloud of doubts of this pandemic. But when there is a doubt, go to the library.
1 minute remaining.
Thus said J.K. Rowling, because libraries store the energy that fuels the imagination. They open up windows to the world and inspire us to explore and achieve and contribute to improving our quality of life. Thus said Sidney Sheldon. The problem is, instead of giving more funds and budget to library, you are making a cut. Library is a place where one learns. Learning is the beginning of the wealth. Learning is the beginning of prosperity. So instead of cuts, we need more budgetary supports to the library services. One way of doing things right is to do it wrong. But don't do wrong for too long. You have been investing money in so-called steel of ring for long, which has been not helpful for differently abled people, the disabled long. Therefore, I would recommend that the officers and the cabinet and the council once again looks into this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kumar. Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. As a Conservative, I welcome Councillor Samuel's fiscally responsible approach and appreciate his balancing of the budget, as the Council is legally required to do. However, I do have two caveats. One is actually a reaction to Councillor Guy's hope not hate promise, which we've just heard him make in the same breath as he claims that Conservatives talk down the area that we all live in. The same spirit pervaded the cabinet meeting last Thursday, which turned into a Tory damning party political broadcast made without possibility of reply and made at councillor taxpayers' expense. More hope, less hate, please. My other caveat concerns the library cut. We know that libraries play a very vital role in our communities, especially after 2 years in which education has been disrupted for our children. Ready access to knowledge has become an even more precious commodity. Councillor Samuel acknowledged this in 2017 when he spoke of the desperate need for a top-class library Bath can be proud of. But it has to be said that this funding cut which he's making makes that worthy aspiration less likely to be achieved. However, we must be fiscally responsible. If this saving isn't made, what else could be cut to balance the budget? As the previous speaker says, we have the ring of steel on offer. I remind the council and residents watching this meeting at home that the revenue budget contains operating costs for the Bath Ring of Steel of £128,000. This is the ring of steel that nobody asked for, that nobody wants, and which is as unnecessary as it is unsightly. So rather than blocking access to the city centre while raiding the resources of the library service, This administration should rethink its priorities and ditch both misguided proposals.
1 minute remaining.
Halt the library cuts and make up the funding gap by scrapping the ring of steel. Easy. I note that the proposal to cut £126,000 includes a review of service delivery options for Keynsham and Midsummer Norton's libraries. This administration has thankfully withdrawn its proposal to charge for parking in Midsummer Norton's South Road car park, as we've heard. I hope that a similar reflection might lead to this being applied to the library's funding cut and a similar conclusion be reached. Midsummer Norton needs to be supported, not undermined. The administration has said these cuts are merely efficiency savings that will not have a negative impact on service delivery. Well, it seems the Friends of Bath Library remain unconvinced by this claim, and I share their concerns. I therefore join them in urging the administration to ditch these cuts, or at least give council, residents and their children a cast iron guarantee that library services across Baines really will not be negatively impacted by these cuts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Councillor David, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to speak to welcome the investment that this administration is making in our natural environment. As we all know, all councils have endured successive years of funding cuts, topped off by the devastating impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. In this context, I'm proud that the council is not only balancing its books, but also investing to improve the quality of our green spaces, building capacity amongst our staff and launching new projects that will benefit communities across the council area. Under our leadership, the council has created a new natural environment team that is championing work on green infrastructure and nature recovery. This budget includes significant investment in green infrastructure, with £375,000 of SIL money going towards our open spaces, river corridors and parks. Much of this money will be used as match funding, which will draw in even greater investment into our local environment. We will shortly appoint a nature recovery manager who will progress work on the ecological emergency, including developing a local nature recovery strategy. And meanwhile, we continue to develop our approach to implementing biodiversity net gain so that new development delivers for nature. This will be an important part of our work to make our council area nature positive by 2030, reversing the trends of species decline that we have seen in our lifetime. I encourage colleagues to support this budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor David. Councillor Davies, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm proud to be speaking in support of this budget tonight. Despite the huge financial pressures the council has faced over the last 2 years, despite the strong headwinds we will face in the year ahead, the sound financial stewardship which Councillor Samuel and this Lib Dem administration has shown enables us tonight to consider a budget which is extraordinary for the ambition it presents and the scale of investment in our local area which it unlocks. As Cabinet Member for Council House Building, you won't be surprised to hear me bring particular attention to two of the largest items of capital spend detailed in tonight's report. The nearly £12 million of investment which the Council is committing so that we can deliver the first general needs council houses in a generation, and the further £5 million for affordable housing contained in the budget. In 2019, the Lib Dems committed to the people of Bath and North East Somerset that we would do just this, that for the first time in decades, we would build and deliver council houses for social rent. Councillor Pritchard, you used the words vanity projects to describe the investments outlined in this budget. How worryingly out of touch you are with that statement. Never has the need for new council and affordable housing in our area been so great. We are an area with some of the least affordable housing in the country, with thousands of our local residents currently on our social housing waiting list, hundreds of them in the categories of highest need. Tonight, every one of us at this meeting has the ability to show our support and determination for this council to help our local residents to tackle this issue. As we here tonight are asked to approve a budget which releases the funding to build the first council houses for decades. I know from the conversations I've had with many of you, regardless of your political party, of how much support there is for this programme. And so tonight, I urge you all to put on record your support for the delivery of these new homes by supporting this budget. Some of you may be thinking of abstaining, and to you I urge you to reconsider. An abstention is a public statement of indifference towards helping our residents as we propose this next step in tackling the local housing crisis. Worse still, a vote against will remain forever on your voting record, that when you had the chance to support your residents, you chose to seek to frustrate it, to prevent us putting investment in new affordable and council housing. I urge you instead to support this budget. Vote in favour of the budget, and we can all, with pride, tell our local residents when the first council houses open later this year that we, each of us here tonight, played a part in making it happen. And so tonight, I'm happy to speak in support of this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Bourne, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Samuel, Andy Rothery and his team are to be commended for producing this balanced budget in exceptionally challenging circumstances. I would like to comment on the adult social care elements. Adult social care has, along with all other areas of the council services, been required to make savings, and some have been possible through our transformation programme and the rebasing of budgets in areas where there have been changes in demand. We are, however, investing resources to fund pay inflation and contract inflation to offset increases in employment and living costs, and we are working towards all staff being employed on the rates set out in our fair price of care policy. We are also investing in preparatory work to ensure that we are ready to implement the social care reforms in October 23. We know that these reforms will increase the costs of providing adult social care, and we hope that further funding will be provided by central government to support this from 2023 onwards. Additional funding has also been identified to prepare for young people who we know will be transitioning from children's to adult services, to ensure that their needs continue to be met appropriately. I'm also delighted to note that significant capital investment has been identified to fix the roof at the Carswood Day Centre, which had been leaking for some years. Carswood provides services for people with very complex needs, including a significant proportion with profound and complex learning disabilities. It also acts as a staff base and a venue. It's an essential service, and the repairs should safeguard its future so that we can continue to support some of our most vulnerable residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bourne. Councillor Warren, please.
Hello, I'll just start by clarifying that I've never welcomed traffic chaos, and I'll remind you that in October 2019, Council unanimously supported a major shift to mass transport, walking and cycling to reduce transport emissions as part of the Climate Emergency Progress Report, including you, Councillor Pritchard. This budget demonstrates our continued commitment to addressing the climate and ecological emergencies through investment in both our green transformation team and our sustainable transport teams, accompanied by capital investment in renewable energy and in sustainable transport infrastructure, which will provide residents with practical alternatives to the car. I would like to contrast our commitment here in Baines, Councillor Samuel putting his money where his mouth is on climate change, with the UK Treasury. The budget includes an annual revenue transport levy of £5 million, funding the West of England Combined Authority's role as Transport Authority, through part of which non-commercial so-called supported bus services are funded. Buses are an essential form of sustainable transport, accounting for 2/3 of public transport trips. Our bus services face a funding cliff edge in April, when the COVID recovery grant that has kept our privatised buses solvent throughout the pandemic ends. In the West of England, bus patronage is currently at just 64% of pre-COVID levels. So unless government starts to listen, and soon, to clamour from the regions and the bus companies, services will collapse across the country. In Baines, the 6, 6A and 7 routes have been curtailed at the Guildhall due to the cuts, causing stress to our less mobile residents. The 8 and 178 services have escaped the axe for the time being, funded through our transport levy, but only temporarily. If that were not enough, the government's Bus Back Better programme, which was to have been a fund of £3 billion to transform bus services outside the capital, providing a London standard bus service to all, was cut last month by the Treasury to just £1.4 billion.
1 minute remaining.
This penny pinching on essential services that will support our transition to net zero is an embarrassment in a country that hosted COP26 and published its net zero strategy just 4 years ago. Contrast this with the £5 million investment we are making over 2 years in the new Riverside Linear Park and active travel corridor known as the River Line, which will facilitate walking and cycling across Barthampton Meadows, newly transferred from the Council to the National Trust. The Trust will shortly consult the community on its plans, but they're likely to support biodiversity and ecology, as well as sustainable transport, an improvement on the huge car park the Tories had planned for this sensitive site. The River Line is just one tiny part of the big plans we have for a comprehensive sustainable transport network. Council, I commend to you this budget, which clearly demonstrates this administration's ongoing commitment and determination to use all tools at our disposal to tackle the deepening environmental crisis with seriousness and speed.
Thank you, Councillor Warren. Councillor Romero, please.
Thank you, Chair. As I did at Cabinet last week, I would like to start my remarks by, again, reassuring residents on Bath Central Library. There are no cuts to services in Bath Central Library. It is not being merged with one-stop shop services, and no services have been moved to it. This is not a rerun of the Conservative proposals of 2018, which I fought against alongside those who have come to speak to Council tonight. I know what Bath Library means to residents and have no desire to see what it does diminished in any way. What I want, like our speakers, is to see this offer enhanced and to encourage even more people to use Bath Central Library for its core purposes, to quote Mary English, for learning, reading and research. Councillor Samuel has outlined the financial situation, and we can see that savings are being asked for across a wide range of council services. So it should be expected that we take a moment to consider if so, how libraries in Bath and Midsummer Norton and Keynsham better serve residents. In doing this, we need to recognise how services are now being accessed and what residents want from these public services. Over the last 2 years, during the height of the pandemic, we have seen a large number of residents choose to access services digitally instead of face-to-face. Fewer people are physically accessing one-stop shop services. At the same time, a new police station is nearing completion within Lewis House. Bath Central Library could be a suitable location to house a few ancillary services. However, it is not the only suitable location, and potential alternatives are to be looked at. I take on board the point made by Mary English that there is no guarantee that a few services, if put into the library, will not expand to a full one-stop shop under another political party. All I can give is my personal assurance that this will not happen if I have any influence, and that any changes will be fully discussed and must be agreed to be the best way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. Councillor Rigby, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Firstly, I'd like to echo my thanks to Richard and his officer team for the inordinate amount of work that they put into this budget. Like other Cabinet members, I'll speak a little bit about my own portfolio, but I'll also highlight where I'm pleased there's been investment. And that's right, investment. Against a loss in revenue, we are still protecting what is important to you. I don't know about anybody else, but I actually feel chills when I hear Councillor Davies speak about us being in the position of being able to have the first council houses in a generation built in Bath and North East Somerset. If that isn't something we can all feel pride in, I don't know what is. In my portfolio, probably the most remarkable thing is how we've been able to protect what we want to achieve. Assuming this budget goes through, over the next few weeks, there will be updates on livable neighbourhoods, resident parking zones, active travel, to name a few, some of which will sit in sustainable travel with Councillor Warren. But there'll also be speed limit consultations, crossings, reviews of the assets that we hold that have suffered from a lack of investment over a long, long time. Maybe some of the less headline catching work, but it's vital to our communities. I must, as a ward councillor, welcome the investment made in Bathwick, which I requested. specifically around work to repair the highways after the work on Cleveland Pools finishes, and getting more lighting in a route for walking, which will make it safer for all. Finally, I must respond to Councillor Pritchard again. The city centre security scheme came about because the anti-terrorist team told us that we had to protect our citizens via an ATTRO, and I'm sad that he doesn't feel the same. The police have been involved at all stages of its design and implementation. It has been running now for 1.5 months. In that time, there have been no complaints, and every blue badge holder who wished to get access got access. In fact, they got easier access as they're now not competing with other cars for places to park. If Councillor Pritchard wants to get the actual facts and numbers, I'm very happy to ask the officers to ensure that he gets to read them so he understands what is actually happening, not what he may choose to believe. And the costs in this year's budget reflect the fact that currently the barriers are operated by people, whilst the retractable bollards are sourced and installed. But I do agree with Councillor Pritchard on one thing, and I don't know who's going to be more shocked by that. The volume of traffic created by the University of Bath is incredibly high, and I can confirm that we are talking with them about how we can address this issue. I fully commend this budget to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rigby. Councillor Ball, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can I thank Councillor Samuel and his officers for the amount of work they've done to actually bring this budget forward. It's a very tough year to try and get anything forward and any expanded programmes forward. Can I thank him for the foresight in allowing us to invest in planning policy the first time in many, many years. There's some very tough issues going on with the west of England and the amount of housing Bristol expect us to take to cover their shortfall. We need to invest properly to ensure we can actually deliver quality housing in the right places, not the wrong places. So I thank him for that very clearly. There's a lot of positives in this budget, and you wouldn't have known it hearing Councillor Pritchard speak. He seems to have totally missed the point, and it is no wonder there are no Conservative councillors in the City of Bath whatsoever. He's clearly spelt the reasons out why tonight. What I'd like to do as well is comparison his speech to that of Councillor Moss. Robin gave a very powerful speech and actually picked up positives in the budget and negatives in the budget. I understand his group will be abstaining on the budget vote. But he's made some very important issues tonight and very clear, very precise. I commend this budget to Council tonight and hope you'll all support it, and hope Councillor Moss will rethink again and vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. Can we have Councillor Dogood, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wish to speak in support of the budget. On the revenue side, given the extraordinary emergency of the last 2 years that included substantial losses of heritage, parking and commercial estate income streams, it is no mean feat to come up with a balanced budget for 22-23. I am particularly supportive of the capital budget. Our #1 commitment to local residents in our manifesto in 2019 was to make Widcombe and Lincoln, quote, a place where residents across the generations can afford to live, work and go to school in a safe environment. By May 2020, with the help of the local residents associations and on-site meetings with staff from Transport and Highways, we put together a comprehensive map of what needed doing in our ward. This budget gives us a start and has provision for Widcombe Hill, an engineering intervention to reduce speed, particularly for the many cyclists and pedestrians that use it for the University of Bath daily. Bloomfield Road, a pedestrian and cycling safety review and delivery in a road used heavily by school children. Through livable neighbourhoods, hopefully a fast tracking of a pedestrian crossing in Prior Park Road. Through livable neighbourhoods, hopefully a fast tracking of a trial, LTN in Church Street. And in Entry Hill and Upper Wellsway area, again through livable neighbourhoods, hopefully an RPZ, and for Entry Hill, a trial LTN. Public consultation will be key, but this allocation of financial resources gives our ward, with major schools, a real chance of transformational change. Change that will make our ward a safer, healthier place to live, work and to go to school and to university. So on behalf of our communities, we are very grateful for this support and the opportunity to address outstanding and growing safety issues, which can only help to promote active travel. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Duguid. Councillor Warrington, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I would like to thank all the officers for the work that they put into this budget to balance this budget. I've seen firsthand how difficult that is. But I also want to say that I am disappointed by the budget. As chair of the Scrutiny panel, the Corporate Development and Policy Scrutiny panel, I have been for months concerned about having a lack of detail, and unfortunately those fears were founded. I don't think that there was enough detail for us to really scrutinise. And I've listened to a number of the administration's ward councillors and listing the projects in their areas. Unfortunately, I can't do that in my area and in some of the areas out towards the Chew Valley and other places. So I'm really disappointed that some of the things that I asked for, there's no transparency with regard to those. So I still don't know if they are in the budget. And now I move on to the capital programme. I am concerned about the capital programme. I am fully aware of what heritage brings to our residents in terms of lowering our council tax. However, £500,000 spent on the Fashion Museum, £385,000 spent on a bike park that requires 500 to 700 people a week to break even. You know, I'd like to have seen some capital expenditure out in some of the areas, rural areas out towards the west of the authority. I don't agree with Councillor Davis's statement with regard to affordable homes. I think you will find that in the rural areas, we are very keen and supportive of rural homes, but we want them in the right place with transport links as well. I'm concerned also about the LTNs. We don't have the luxury in the area of having LTNs. So I had requested feasibility studies to take down speed limits. Again, I can't see those in the budget. I'm very concerned, as I mentioned before, about children's services savings and certainly adult social care. Our demographic is that we are older. And I just want to make sure that there isn't less money available for those who need 24-hour nursing care and incontinence pad, which I know is very difficult. So to sum up, the administration has balanced the budget, but I'm asking that question, is it fair and equitable? And is it realistic given the inflationary pressures that we will see this year? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington. I have noted that Councillor Romero will have 1 more minute, and I have added Councillor Jackson to the list. Meanwhile, Councillor McCabe, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to thank Councillor Samuels and his officers for a very impressive piece of work in very difficult times. We've had an incredible couple of years, and our residents and our businesses have been under tremendous pressure during the last 2 years. But as we came out of it, our communities have pulled together, and I'm sure that includes us as councillors as well. I was talking to a resident of mine who was telling me how difficult it is to be a Conservative at the moment, given the antics of our leader, partying whilst the rest of us suffered. But we agreed that regardless of our parties at a local level, all of us as councillors have done our utmost to make ourselves available to our local communities, despite the restrictions put upon us. I commend all of you for achieving that. But as we get back to some sort of normal, we remember that sat-navs have opened up all our residential streets and our villages to speeding vehicles. And those of us, those people who worship the car, rage at suggestions that they shouldn't be allowed to drive wherever
and whenever they like. But some 50 communities across Bath and North East Somerset have said enough is enough, and they have asked for a livable community, a livable neighbourhood. And I think that's one of the reasons that some people are missing the message in Bath. This is asked for by the residents, livable neighbourhoods. And I'm pleased that this budget will continue to invest in our communities like this, but also invest in the services that our communities need particularly. Finally, I'd like to say, that, I'll add actually that I'm very pleased to see that the blue badge holders in Bath and in Bath Avon South, in my ward, can continue to access the city centre despite the negative messages and disinformation being put about in certain quarters.
1 minute.
We continue to make Bath, which is such a beautiful, fantastic place to shop and spend your leisure time, one of the best places in Britain. And as footfall is showing that we are recovering very fast compared to our competitors. And many of us across the rural communities will benefit from this continued investment in the visitor economy, as many of us do have accommodation that supports tourism. So we're very pleased to see this budget come forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Moore, please.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman. I'd just like to thank Councillor Samuel and the council team for this budget. They have listened to what the residents have asked for through the councillors in the way that this budget has been put together. A lot of the residents within Twerton and Whiteway have expressed concern over a number of different things that have happened over a number of years. And this budget helps to address those issues. We've got a number of roads that are being resurfaced at the moment and hopefully will continue to do so in the next financial year. Council housing is a major issue. We've got the largest number of council houses in Twerton and Whiteway for the whole of Baines, and I'm still asked for by our residents for more. So this is a very vital thing that we are doing. Street cleansing and waste and recycling, the investment this budget brings to neighbourhood services is to be commended. It's really something that affects every single resident in our wards. And also the high street investments will hopefully benefit those in Twerton High Street as well through this budget. And finally, as Councillor Bourne has already mentioned, the roof replacement at Carswood Centre, which is a vital amenity that we have within Twerton. And I would express my gratitude to everybody that's put this budget together and would ask for everybody to support this where they can, please.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Wood, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Before the Liberal Democrats were elected in 2019, we'd seen year after year of Tory cuts, the slash and burn of our public services. But the Liberal Democrats are ambitious, Bath and North East Somerset, and we've spent the last 2 years starting to reverse these cuts. Tonight, I'm proud to say that we're seeing unprecedented investment in frontline services. We're seeing investment in recycling and recycling centres that follows our best ever recycling year last year, with Baines bucking the national trend and shooting up the league table to become the 4th best recycling unitary authority in the country. We're seeing an extra £2 million for fixing our roads, an extra £1 million for cleaning our streets. We'll be providing free graffiti cleaning for private homes for the first time in Bath and North East Somerset. We're stopping the use of chemicals for weeding on our streets. We're increasing the number of drains that we will clean by 50%. We've doubled the A and B road litter picking in North East Somerset, and we're set to increase this further over the coming year. We're tripling the budget for repainting road markings. We're also putting a new team in place to lead clean-up days across Bath and North East Somerset, going to every area, bringing extra council cleaning staff and residents together to make our area even cleaner. Now, the Conservatives might call this skewed priorities, but I'd like to know anyone who wants to go home tonight to look their residents in the eye and say to them, I did not vote to support this investment in our town or our village or in our part of the city. As Councillor Davis mentioned earlier, how you vote tonight impact will be on your record, and your residents will hold you to account for it next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Romero, you have 1 more minute. Councillor, yeah, okay, 1 more minute, Dina.
Thank you. So to sum up my earlier points, a target saving is in the budget but reprofiled. Plans are not yet drawn up, and we will seek input from users, and a formal consultation will take place. In other areas of interest in my portfolio, there is an expectation that we can reduce spend on home to school transport by £40,000 by centralising alternative provision on 1 single site instead of 2. We will also be able to reduce our spending by £50,000 on interagency adoption fees, and we expect to reduce costs in foster care through transformation programmes, and these projects will release over £1 million of committed costs. All will be aware that children and adult social care is the most costly part of any council budget, so I'm pleased to be able to put forward these expected reductions in spending, and I'd like to stress that these are not cuts, and so these are not cuts to services. And in addition to this, we will be investing in a range of areas within my portfolio, including a focus on apprenticeships, which will help with succession planning, as well as giving people real new opportunities, regardless of age, previous experience or qualifications. And I'd just like to add my thanks to staff across my portfolio and within Andy Rotherwood's team, including Andy and Councillor Samuel, for bringing this monumental piece of work to a conclusion as a balanced budget. And I will be supporting the budget as set out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Romero. I see Councillor Hurst has also requested to speak. I'm going to draw a line under Councillor Hurst. We have Councillor Jackson and Councillor Hurst. That makes 22 speakers from the floor. So Councillor Jackson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. It seems that my delicate hands didn't tap the keyboard hard enough, and that was how my first application was missed. Or maybe it's because I wrote in small letters. But anyway, I don't want to bang on about that. And after all the speeches that we've heard, a lot of what I was going to say has been said, so I won't bang on about that either. I have spent, though, the last hour or so twitching a bit because I used to be an RE teacher, terrible confession, and then I went on to be a lecturer in religious studies. And it quite often happened that a student would come in with an essay and I have to hand it back to them and say, yes, you've got some good ideas here. There's a good essay in there somewhere, but I'm not going to mark it because you need to try again harder. Now, obviously, in the present situation, this budget is not going to get referred back to a second meeting, but I do hope that the administration have been listening to what's been said about the lack of transparency, the lack of consultation, the attempt to slip the increase in parking charges for Midsummer Norton and Radstock through in one line on page 5 of Appendix 1 of the budget. And similarly, there's a most mysterious £4 million for a residential unit at Bath College, Radstock. I hate to tell you this, but there is no Bath College in Radstock. It's in Westfield. And you do wonder if they can't get the location right, what about the rest of the budget? I think Councillor Moss put his finger on it hard when he said these were difficult times and the budget was disappointing, because an opportunity had been missed to improve things with a greater vision, for example, of the potential for tourism in North East Somerset. I complain that there is no joined up thinking with, on the one hand, investment in the high street, on the other hand, the attempt to bring in parking charges. Our libraries in Radstock and Poulton have actually greatly increased in their use. I wonder if it's got anything to do with the fact they're run by the town councils. But I'm sure things will pick up and there should be accessed. Finally, when Radstock Cooperative Society, which is in Westfield, introduced parking charges on its large car park a few years ago, they had a drop in trade of 25%. I am worried that with all these measures in Bath, we will find a drop of 25% in visits to the centre of Bath, to the library, and to what are, for many older people, quite essential services in Lewis House. So, finally, I'm very...
Carry on.
Half a tick, please, because I've been asked to raise this point about the planning department. They are seriously understaffed for the work they have to do with the loss of several senior members of staff with all their expertise. I am worried about this turnover 2%. We must have enough planning officers and planning enforcement officers so that the job can be done properly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jackson. Final speaker tonight on this motion, on this agenda item, Councillor Hurst, please. Councillor Hurst. There you go, Councillor Hurst.
Pull out my speakers. Thank you, Madam Chair, and my reflections on what I think is a very exciting budget debate tonight. A few quick points. First of all, there doesn't seem to be any debate about the issue that this Lib Dem Council is giving sound financial management of the council resources, and that's fantastic, and it should be recognised. I think the second point is that this Lib Dem Council is listening and takes actions and listens to residents and adapts to the needs of its residents. There are in particular 2 or 3 key things for people in Odddown that I think we particularly appreciate in terms of the budget. One is the investment in the social housing. So the council housing programme is the most exciting opportunity to kind of really address the challenges that we've got around accessing affordable housing in our area. The second is the investment in neighbourhood services and the focus on investing in the street resurfacing, the litter and all of that, which our residents greatly appreciate. And the third, which I think we can't hide away, is the issue of making sure we're investing in our future. And it was a very strange comment that Councillor Pritchard made about we can't save the world, but we can focus on Bath and North East Somerset. Unfortunately, we are part of this world and we have our part to play. So we have to engage with this, encourage and support people in making those changes in behaviours to help make our environment better in Bath and North East Somerset and make our whole world environment better. And my final kind of reflection was really about the choices that are becoming clear between this Lib Dem Council who delivers and actually takes difficult decisions and addresses some of the tough issues versus a Tory opposition that are offering empty promises, who talk about congestion, never have delivered on them. Lib Dems have always felt that council tax is a regressive tax, but somehow we've managed to pull forward the ideas and to deliver an exciting opportunity for our residents. So I commend the budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hurst. I now call on Councillor Samuel to sum up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, in closing this debate, I would like to first thank the finance team, ably led by Andy Rothery, for their work in navigating the complexity in preparing an annual gross budget of over 360 million. The new senior management team has worked tirelessly and effectively with the Cabinet to put this budget together. I would also like to thank all those who contributed to public consultation and to Councillor Warrington for the contribution of the corporate PDS panel. There were some issues I will comment on. It's very disappointing to hear the leader of the opposition party once again repeat the mistruths that he has frequently used about the city centre security measures. Clearly the leadership malaise in the Tory party has spread. On the question of inflation, the overall provision within the budget is 5.5%, 0.1% above the current national CPI rate. So you will find it distributed through the budget, which is perhaps why members have missed it. On the issue raised by Councillor Wright of the Virgin Now Healthcare Resourcing Group contract, that was a flat cash contract approved by Councillor Pritchard in 2016, and that is why there is going to be a problem with that contract. So just look back at your papers and you'll see who approved that contract. The capital programme, well, I won't make any comments on that other than say to Councillor Warrington, £42 million will be spent in North East Somerset in the coming year. I think that's a considerable investment into our rural areas. And on the, excuse me, on the question of transparency, the budget report contains 11,000 words without the annexes. I really don't think, members, you want to read 25,000 words and it's still not enough for you. So I think probably I'll take the comments on transparency with a little bit of a pinch of salt. I've highlighted the clear choices available to deliver services to residents. Our way is to invest in the future, whether it be better recycling, building new homes at genuinely affordable rents, improving our many wonderful open spaces and buildings, tackling our many difficult transport challenges, cleaning up our air and our streets, and making Bath North East Somerset a safe, secure place for visitors, businesses and residents. Bath North East Somerset Council is a well-run council with solid finances and low council tax rates. We will never privatise services, cut jobs, waste money on vanity projects, or play fast and loose with taxpayers' money. Well, our budget is the culmination of a year's work, and like Sisyphus, my labour on the 23-24 budget begins now. So thank you, members, for this debate. It's been interesting, and we will take action on the things that members have raised if we think they are relevant. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samuels. Well, as you know, we will be having a named vote. So can I go over to Joe, please, to call for the vote?
Yeah, I'm muted now.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Rob Appleyard.
It's 4.
Tim Ball.
4.
Sarah Bevan.
Abstain.
Colin Blackburn.
Against.
Alison Bourne. Alison Bourne.
Can you unmute, please?
Sorry, I'm
Can you
struggling to-
unmute?
Yes, I am unmuted now. 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Shelley Bromley.
4.
Neil Butters.
4.
Vic Clark.
Abstain.
Sue Craig.
4.
Paul Crossley.
4.
Jerry Curran.
4.
Chris Stando.
Abstain.
Jess David.
4.
Tom Davis.
4.
Sally Davis.
Abstain.
Doug Deacon.
Against.
Winston Duguid.
4.
Mark Elliott.
4.
Michael Evans.
Abstain.
Andy Furs.
4.
Kevin Guy.
4.
Alan Hale.
Abstain.
Liz Hardman.
Abstain.
Steve Hedges.
4.
Joel Hurst. Councillor Hurst, sorry, yeah.
4.
Thank you. Lucy Hodge.
4.
Duncan Hounsell.
4.
Sean Hughes.
Against.
Eleanor Jackson.
Abstain.
Grant Johnson.
Abstain.
Dr. Kumar.
Against.
Al McPhee.
4.
Ruth Malloy.
4.
Paul May.
Abstain.
Matt McCabe.
4.
Sarah Moore.
4.
Robin Moss.
Abstain.
Paul Myers,
Abstain.
Lisa O'Brien,
Abstain.
Michelle O'Doherty,
For.
June Player,
Against.
Vic Pritchard,
Abstain.
Amanda Rigby,
For.
Dina Romero,
For.
Mark Roper,
For.
Richard Samuel,
For.
Bruce Shern,
For.
Brian Simmons,
Abstain.
Alistair Singleton,
For.
Sean Stevenson McGall,
For.
Andy Waite,
For.
Karen Walker,
Abstain.
Sarah Warren,
For.
Carl Warrington,
Abstain.
Ryan Wills,
For.
David Wood,
For.
Joanna Wright.
Abstain.
Thank you. That's 34 votes for, 5 votes against and 18 abstentions. So that is carried.
Thank you, Joe. As it is now 20:33, I propose we have a 10-minute break. Can I remind everyone to turn off their camera and their mic? So 10 minutes, please. 33, 43, let's call it set 8:45, we'll return. Thank you.
Can I just apologise, Councillor Mary? I was craftily trying to eat a sandwich and I got my mixed up. When I got to you, we were the only person all night. I've done that. I'm really sorry.
That's okay. I'll try not to take it personally.
Sorry.
The truth will out. Eating on the job, huh?
Or you're just easily confused by a sandwich.
No, that's fine. Well done.
I always thought it was a sandwich, short of a picnic.
Thank you for your apology, Sean.
We will be live in 1 minute.
No, Liz, sorry, Councillor Brown, we are live. We remain live on YouTube.
Oh, I
So-
do beg your pardon. Right.
That's okay.
We will start again in 1 minute, shall we say. Okay, it is now 20:45, so we will proceed. Sometimes it would appear that even 10 minutes is not enough. Okay, the next item, agenda item 9, the Treasury Management Strategy Statement 2022-23. Councillor Samuels, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the annual Treasury Management Statement for approval alongside the Council budget. And as members will know, it sets out the approach to the management of the Council's cash flows, borrowings, investments, together with associated risks. The strategy is prepared in accordance with the CIPFA Code of Practice, and as such meets our legal obligations. At a high level, there are very few significant changes to the strategy Council approved last year. The main change has been the addition of an environmental, social and governance section to the strategy, which some members may recall. And in the 21-22 document, there was a lot of text covering this as it was a new policy, but this has now been slimmed down in this statement as it's a live policy and working. Some of the other changes relate to updates in the CIPFA Code of Practice, which was released on the 20th of December last year, and full compliance with these technical changes is not required until the 23-24 financial year, but wherever possible, we have incorporated technical revisions. At a detailed level, the money market fund limits have been revised upwards from 50 to 60 million, reflecting the turbulence in cash flow over the last 2 years. So, for example, the distribution of COVID business grants has created cash flow issues at times as the funds flow through the council to individual businesses from the government. So to accommodate this, we have set up some new money market fund accounts with £10 million cash limits on each to make that cash flow handling a bit easier. A change has also been made to the amount that can be lent to any one organisation, and this is now set at £10 million to limit the council's exposure in its reserves, and that the figure set represents 14.1% of the council's reserves, which at the last time of reckoning at the end of 21-2 stood at £71 million. So this is a measure to reduce exposure in the unlikely event of default. Madam Chair, that's all I wish to say by way of introduction. I'd be happy to take the opportunity to thank the Treasury Management Team for their daily work on the strategy components and to move the recommendations set out at paragraph 2.1 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Samuels. I believe we have Councillor Elliott to second, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman.
As chair of the Corporate Audit Committee, I'd like to add my thanks for the hard work of the officers in managing the council's investments in what continue to be unpredictable times financially. The Treasury management reports to corporate audit are always clear and informative, and the strategy clearly continues to be effective and robust, providing a solid, reliable financial base on which the council can reliably invest in its services. Our borrowing is well under control and within our limits, and our returns on investments continue to outperform our benchmark rates. I'm also, along with Councillor Samuel, delighted to highlight the continued inclusion in the strategy of our ability to invest in the ESG funds, the Environment, Social and Governance funds. That's something which our council did for the first time this year and which I very much hope will continue. We have a sound, prudent, well executed Treasury strategy, and I'm pleased to second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Do we have any member who wishes to speak on this? I can't see anything coming up in the chat. No. Well, I will go back to you therefore, Councillor Samuel, to sum up, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have nothing to add to my introductory remarks, so I suggest we put this to the vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we'll go to the vote on this, and as a normal procedure, does anyone who wishes to vote against this, please can you indicate it in the chat now? Any votes against? Are there any abstentions on this one? No, then the motion has been carried. Thank you. We now move on to agenda item 10, the land at Manor Road. I would just advise councillors that this report is to change the decision-making body, i.e. the process, but not to debate on the details and merits of the proposal, since this is the subject of a live planning application. So with this in mind, can I ask Councillor Ball to move the recommendation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. As is a live plan application, I'll merely move the recommendation of the 2.1 of the report.
Thank you. That was quick. Councillor Shern, you are going to second it, I believe.
Yeah, I will honestly pleased to second it. Thank you.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item? No, then Councillor Ball, I assume you don't wish to sum up?
I can say thank you.
Thank you. So we will now take a vote on the matter. Is there anyone who is against accepting these recommendations? No. Is there anyone who wishes to abstain on the recommendation? No, then the recommendations are passed. Thank you. We move on to agenda item 11, the Corporate Audit Committee Annual Report. Can I ask Councillor Elliott to move the recommendation, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There are two parts to the motion I'm proposing this evening. The first part is simply that the Council note the annual report from the Audit Committee. As a committee with specific powers delegated from full Council, the Corporate Audit Committee is required to report back to full Council annually on its activity. I don't intend to repeat the information contained within the report, but as chair of the committee, I'd like to record the committee's thanks to all the officers who presented to us over the 2021 year. It was obviously an extremely difficult period because of the pandemic, but it's in periods of crisis that it's doubly important to be sure that both financial governance and risk management are robust. I'm pleased to confirm that all the evidence reported to the committee indicates that this is the case, and I'm very happy to propose that the council note the report. The second part of the motion is less of a run-of-the-mill item, so I think the council is due a brief explanation, and so I'm afraid I will have to take my 5 minutes to provide that. As part of the audit framework introduced by the 2014 Local Audit and Accountability Act, we are required to have an external auditor to examine our annual accounts and provide a value for money statement. We have a right to appoint our own auditors directly, but along with 98% of other local authority organisations, Baines decided that the appointment provisions set out in the law were too onerous for us to undertake this ourselves, and we opted to use the PSAA, the Public Sector Audit Appointments Limited, a company set up by the Local Government Association, to appoint our external auditor. And so since the 2018-19 financial year, Grant Thornton have been appointed our external auditor. This was a 5-year arrangement, and we're now asked if we want to use the PSAA again for the next 5-year appointment period. I do have to report to the council that there has been an ongoing issue with the external auditor not being able to complete their work on time. This is a nationwide systemic problem, not something isolated to Baines. Pre-pandemic external auditors were expected to have finished their work auditing the accounts by the July following the financial year end in April for any given year. 40% of local authority audits failed to hit that target in 2018-19. Due to the pandemic, for the last 2 years, that deadline for completion of the external audit has been extended to September. In September last year, only 9% nationally of local authorities audits had actually been completed by the extended September deadline. Our own accounts were signed off by the external auditor in December. These delays cause disruption and extra work for our officers who have to respond to queries from external auditors well beyond the planned period. So again, my thanks to officers for coping with this on top of all their other COVID-related disruption. Despite this systemic problem, however, after discussion between the committee members and with input from officers, the committee unanimously agreed to recommend to council that we opt into the PSAA process again. The alternative is going it alone, but this is as burdensome and as unattractive as it was 5 years ago when the decision came around last time, or to group together with other local authorities to procure as a group. Our Section 151 officer tells us that he has spoken to his counterparts in surrounding authorities and none of them have the appetite to do this. So despite the obvious difficulties with external audit over the previous few years, the committee acknowledged that there is no real alternative other than to use the PSAA process for the next round of procurement. The last time I proposed the annual audit committee report to the council, I mentioned that the independent Redmond review was set up to examine the effectiveness of external audit. If anyone would like pointing towards that report after this meeting, please feel free to contact me. It's extremely clear, concise and well produced, and I await government action on it. One of its findings was that external audit fees are roughly 25% below the level they need to be in order for external audit providers to have the resources to provide an effective service. So I suspect that's why our systemic problem exists nationally. But as I say, the committee has discussed the matter, and with no other viable alternative existing, we recommend that the council opt in to the PSAA procurement process for the next 5 years. I therefore move the item as detailed in sections 2.1 and 2.2 on page 175 of the report pack.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I call on Councillor Simmons to second this recommendation. Sorry.
I will just say that I will second this motion because it's a very long saga. I don't want to repeat anything that's already been said, so I just second it and speed things along. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this matter? No, so we go back to you, Councillor Elliott. Do you wish to sum up, or have you said everything you want to say?
I've said everything I want to say. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Don't feel pressured at all. Right, we'll go to the vote. Is there anyone who wishes to vote against the adoption of these recommendations? Is there anyone who wishes to abstain from the recommendations? No, so the motion has been passed. The recommendations have been passed. Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 12, constitution proportionality review. Councillor Guy, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a normal constitutional proportionality change. So I move the recommendations as stated in the paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
I'll also keep that very short and sweet, and I'm happy to second the recommendation.
Fine, thank you. Do you wish to sum up, Councillor Guy, or shall we move straight to the vote?
Move straight to the vote, please, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone who wishes to vote against? Is there anyone who wishes to abstain? No, so the proposal is carried. We now have questions, statements, etc. from councillors. You will have seen 2 questions which have already been circulated from Councillor Wright, together with the responses given by Councillor Guy. They have been circulated to you. We have a speaker in Councillor Kumar, who wishes to make a statement on building communities and shared dreams. Councillor Kumar.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. I've been suffering from bullying, discrimination, and manipulative laws for more than 3 years, and I continue to suffer. And my family, with a teenage son who proudly represents our country and county in chess and math, suffers. When I raised this issue, rather than any concern, I was muzzled, deselected, and a false complaint of being aggressive was made against me. The charge of aggression was I contained solely based on a single email that I sent to the then leader of the group, who is present here, at least 2 years ago. I talked about karma and questioned why perhaps God had chosen me to eradicate the rotten apples in our garden. That was it. That was really it. No aggression, no violence, no threats. And there was no action or complaint at that time. But when the Lib Dems learned last Christmas that I intend to leave the party in what I regard as a preemptive attack, they approached to the police in an attempt to rubbish my good name. There are several additional instances of being insulted, maligned, and slandered by some senior members of this council sitting here before us. They know who they are. I'm very, very sorry to say that I believe the roots of some of these attacks are based, and again, sorry, the word are racism, direct, indirect, and institutional.
Right, Councillor Kumar, can I just pause you there? Can you pause right? Do be very aware of the rules of council, that you should always respect other councillors and not use inflammatory language. So
Sure,
can you please bear that in mind? Thank
Sure,
you.
madam. So, Councillor Carrick, you rightly say, we have a code of conduct that we must adhere to. It states we must act with integrity and honesty. Second, treat all persons fairly with respect. And third, lead by example and act in a way that secures public confidence in the role of councillor. And that's what I am speaking, that we need to build communities. I've always said that resolving a conflict is much more rewarding than dissolving professional relationship. The whole community, and our community from South Asia, they're bewildered. And that's why we need to build the communities. The leaders of the local Lib Dems have made public statement that I am the perpetrator and not a victim. Excellent. Let us go to the truth. And my final point, I today beseech you to support me in my call for a full investigation, which has occurred to me by the Standard Committee or any other panel containing independent voices that seek the truth. I asked the monitoring officer to make this happen. Lesson needs to be learned.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Kumar. Now, you have the opportunity, group leaders, to ask factual questions. So, Councillor Guy, do you have any factual question you wish to ask?
I have absolutely no factual questions for Councillor Kumar now.
Thank you. Councillor Pritchard, do you have any factual questions?
No factual questions, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, do you have any factual questions?
No factual questions, thank you.
Councillor Moss, do you have any factual questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kumar. Right, well, we have done extremely well, ladies and gentlemen, and people generally. We have finished at 4 minutes past 9. So thank you very much to all of you for your contribution this evening.